What's going on, guys? This is Simon from Shanghai again. Last week in Hong Kong, hundreds of thousands of people marched on the streets against the proposed extradition law. People are feared that the bill would cause the city to open up to mainland Chinese law and that people from Hong Kong could become subject to a different legal system. So today, let's talk a little bit about this sensitive matter. If we want to understand the whole picture of the situation, first of all, we need to go back to where it began. It all started from the legal case of a Hong Kong man accused of murdering his girlfriends in Taiwan. Basically, what happened is that the guy traveled to Taiwan with his pregnant wife and murdered her, and then he fled back to Hong Kong. After Taiwan police found the body, they want the Hong Kong government to send the guy back to Taiwan for trial. But there's no legal framework for the Hong Kong government to follow. So the government tried to come up with new law to establish a mechanism for transfers of fugitives, not only for Taiwan, but also for mainland China and Macau, which are not covered under the existing law. The Hong Kong government said the legal loophole needs to be closed to uphold justice and align cities' laws with international standards, and it will prevent Hong Kong from being a haven for fugitives. So what do I think about the bill? First of all, I'm no expert on legal matters. I'm not going to analyze the bill clause by clause, and I don't think I'm capable of doing so. I'm just going to share my own viewpoint as a local Chinese. If you ask me whether certain law is needed to fill the blank of Hong Kong's current law so that the real criminals can all be sent back to the place where he committed the crime, and to prevent Hong Kong from being a perfect shelter for criminals, I would say yes, I agree that Hong Kong needs to come up with some law to uphold justice. I think everyone will agree that people who have committed crime should be punished, and those who fled to Hong Kong shouldn't be exempted from charges. However, at the same time, I also understand Hong Kong people's concern. People are worried that if the extradition law has passed, the central government could utilize the law against a certain type of people, such as human rights activists and political dissidents. Although some legal scholars from Hong Kong said the current bill is acceptable and the court will review the case if it involves political persecution, it looks like the Hong Kong people still don't trust it. They believe that China will still find some ways to come up with some fabricated charges and manage to bring the people they want back to China. So you see, we are facing an impasse. On the one hand, Hong Kong needs an extradition law to fill the loophole. On the other hand, the Hong Kong people fear that the law will be utilized by the Chinese government to hurt Hong Kong's independent legal system. How do we solve that dilemma? If you ask me whether there is a quick solution, I'm gonna say no. At least I can see it. If you have an answer, please drop a comment and share with us. However, I think there may be a long-term solution, but it will take years to be effective. Let me explain it to you. Let's look back to the extradition bill. Let's assume, what if the proposed law is only applicable to cases between Hong Kong and Taiwan, but not mainland China? Will Hong Kong people still make such a fuss on streets? I don't think so. Moreover, I don't think Hong Kong people would have any concern if the bill is to make mutual legal assistance with other countries that are governed by the rule of law. But once mainland China is involved, no matter how perfectly the bill is written, no matter how many times the officials have promised they won't use the law to hinder Hong Kong's independent legal system, Hong Kong people will never trust it. So you see, Hong Kong's issue is essentially a trust issue. They don't trust us. They trust other countries that are governed by the rule of law, since they know their government won't be able to abuse the law because they have an independent legal system. But we are not there yet. Actually, we're quite far away from that. Some of my dear Chinese fellow may have a different opinion on that. I'm not going to argue with you, my friends, but let me just tell you several cases. The first one, in March 2012, Mr. Wang showed up in the US consulate of Chengdu seeking for help. He was not an ordinary guy. At the time, he was the vice mayor and police chief of Chongqing. Wang felt threatened because he has fallen out with his superior. But instead of seeking help from the Central Legal Department, his first option is the US consulate. Why? The second one, on October 4, 2018, Ms. Meng reported her husband missing to the French police. She is not an ordinary woman either. Her husband was the president of Interpol and the vice minister of public security in China. After her husband is missing in China, instead of looking for help from the Chinese police department, she reported to French police and asked for protection. Why? The third one, Early this year, in an interview with Australian media, Ms. Yuan said that she was not allowed to visit her husband and hasn't heard any news about him after he was arrested. She hopes the Australian government can pay more attention to the case and help her bring her husband back. Ms. Yuan is no ordinary people either. She is one of the most famous pro-Chinese government figure on the internet. But instead of having faith for her own government, like she always said in her social media, she begs the Australian government for justice. Why? There are many cases like that, but I'm not going to cover every one of them. Just from the above 3 cases, what do you see? You guys need to remember that those people are not average Chinese. They were all very important people in the system, and based on the choices they made when they were in danger, I think the whole things are pretty self-explanatory. Action always speaks louder than words, especially elite action. However, what if we start changing our own legal system? What if we can really adopt the idea of the rule of law? If we can start reforming and let Hong Kong people see our resolution, I believe we will gradually gain the trust back. I know the whole process will take a very long time, and it is not going to be easy, but I think it is the best way, and it is probably the only way. Not only will the rule of law disperse Hong Kong people's concern about the extradition bill, but it will also be beneficial to every single people living in mainland China. Whether you are an average Chinese guy like me or a senior official from the government, a fair, transparent, independent legal system will protect all of us and uphold the justice of the country. No wife and mother should ever have to fear that their loved one will receive unfair trials. If we could really achieve this, many problems will be solved automatically, and China will be one of the most habitable places for us to live in the world. But of course, the decision is not made by me. Everything I have said in this video is just my own naive thinking. We have to wait and see what will happen to Hong Kong and its people. I wish the Hong Kong government and its people eventually be able to figure out some solution. I think I said too much today. Alright, that's pretty much it for today's video. If you like my video, please hit the thumbs up button. If you want more content about China from a local average Chinese guy, please subscribe to my channel. Once again, thank you so much for the love and support. I will catch you next time. Peace.
现在一些年轻人闹事儿，关键他其实讲起来是家长坏，加上这个教育问题。1997年接触香港的时候，我那时候跟驻港部队领导也一起参加研究香港的设计。香港的社会基础，咱们实事求是讲，是中国最坏的地方，比台湾都坏。这毛主席当然讲中国社会各阶级分析，你分析一个地方情况，你首先分析它社会的社会状况。台湾真正反共的人并不多，当地居民80%的共产党无所谓的。 去的20%很多抓壮丁去的，香港可不一样。香港来讲，1997年咱们接管的时候，当时分析成分，居民成分3个1/3，1/3是香港原住民和他们后代受港英教育，他有点傲气，但是来讲跟你大陆还没什么怨恨。1/3是最坏的。1949年、1950年被共产党清算斗争扫地出门跑过去的，对你刻骨仇恨。再有1/3，3年困难挨饿，那个偷渡对你影响好得了。 说香港回归之后就是一个大失误，现在也总结，一切都不变，你不去殖民化怎么行啊？你香港回归这20多年，教材还是用港英国熟读公民教材，而且他原来想改教材，家长不让改，说学生坏，年轻人坏是家长坏，不让改教材。现在这20多年还是英国熟读公民教材，说现在这些年轻学生闹事儿，他教育糟糕，是教育出了问题。我觉得现在咱们就是采取措施，过去我们讲一个大教训。 过分强调两制，没强调一国呀！去年咱们新特首林郑月娥上来之后，我觉得2件事干得好。第一件事，因为战中闹事的判刑；第二个来讲，从今年开始教材的改，你得用中国公民的教材，你怎么能用英国熟读公民教材？但是把这些人教育过来，再多少搞教育都行，把这些人教育过来，可不是1年2年能办到的事儿。这个教育还是个长期的问题。